Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Today, we're here to talk about truth versus lies, how the Trump-Pence administration have attacked the LGBTQ community for the past 3.5 years, as people at the Republican National Convention now attempt to rewrite history. From day one until today, this administration has systematically targeted LGBTQ people because of who we are or whom we love. Today, we're going to speak with people who have witnessed or experienced that discrimination firsthand, and we're pleased to have each of them with us today. Today, we have Carter Brown, Tanya Walker, Gavin Grimm, and Lizette Trujillo. Thank you all for joining us.
I'm very grateful to be here today and speak in regards to the current administration's anti-LGBTQ rhetoric, which we've experienced for the past 4 years. For myself, the challenge of living in the South under the Trump administration as a Black trans man has been a constant battle to simply have my humanity validated within the eyes of the law. The current administration has made every effort to revoke any and all progress that's been made for trans people in regards to employment, housing, healthcare, the military, public access, and so on. Experiencing blatant racism, discrimination, and transphobia are not uncommon encounters in my experience of living in the South. But now more than ever, we need leadership that will continue to steer our nation away from these divisive and supremacist ideals and induce true equality for all of us as one society.
Carter, as a Black transgender man, and Black transgender people, as you know, in this country face immeasurable challenges. Can you focus just on the past 3.5 years and what it's been like for you living as a Black trans man in the South and under the Trump administration?
Sure, absolutely. For me personally, as a Black trans man, I experienced both the racial bias as well as transphobia. And as I stated, in the South, that's nothing new to encounter. But what is new is that we have leadership that reinforces and even incites these types of discrimination and prejudice that continue to keep transgender citizens the highest rated in unemployment and homelessness and a numerous of other socioeconomic means of access to society.
Many people don't know about the Equality Act. Maybe you could spend a little bit of time telling us why you support the Equality Act and how that piece of legislation would affect your life.
Absolutely. The Equality Act, which basically gives federal protections for all identities, would give me and many other trans citizens and trans children better opportunities to access all socioeconomic systems and institutions that affect our livelihood. And without legislative protections from discrimination based on gender identity and racial bias, Black trans people would continue to be burdened with the highest rates of unemployment, homelessness, and the inability to acquire competent health care, all of which I've experienced. True liberty of thousands of transgender citizens is dependent upon the Biden-Harris administration to move the Equality Act forward, because we, along with the majority of Americans, are ready to make America equal.
Do you feel that the Trump administration's narrative that he is supportive of LGBTQ rights, how do you respond to that when you hear someone says that the Trump administration is supporting LGBTQ people?
Frankly, my response is that's absolutely ridiculous. In my personal life, nor anyone that I've known who is trans has made progress more so because of the Trump administration. What we're seeing and what we take note of is all of the laws that he's tried to reverse or revoke that we have been progressive in making through previous administrations. So that is an absolutely falsehood in real life that we are not, as LGBTQ people, making more progress under the Trump administration.
Carter, I want to thank you for all of the advocacy that you have engaged in over the past several years to advance LGBTQ rights. And I want to thank you for joining us today as well.
Thank you so much, Alfonso.
You're welcome. Now we have our next guest who is joining us, Gavin Grimm. Gavin Grimm found himself placed into the public square when he faced discrimination within his own school district. Gavin, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Can you please just spend a few minutes introducing yourself to our viewers?
My name is Gavin Grimm. I am 21 years old and I live in the Bay Area in California. When I was 15 years old, I returned to my high school as Gavin, as the boy that I was and am, and asked that they respect that and allow me the same rights that all of my peers have. Initially, they did allow me to use the boys' bathroom, and then there were some complaints. And after 7 weeks of using the bathroom with no issues, they banned me from the boys' bathroom. And so, along with the American Civil Liberties Union, we launched a lawsuit against my high school, which endures until this day, this very day. We're still in courts fighting. We went all the way up to the Supreme Court level, and went all the way back down to the local court level, and so it goes. So that is sort of what I have to introduce there.
Well, Gavin, I want to thank you for your courage and your advocacy. And as you know, we're making great progress, we were making great progress, particularly on trans guidance through the Obama administration's Department of Education. And that is one of the very first things that Donald Trump and Betsy DeVos did, was to rescind that guidance. Can you talk to us a little bit about your reaction to that? How did you feel when you saw that guidance being rescinded, guidance that would effectively protect young trans people?
You know, I think, like most others, was not terribly surprised that something like that happened. I was, however, I don't know that surprise is the right word for it, but perhaps revolted that they made it such a priority. I mean, it was one of the very first things that they did, and it set the precedent for the rest of the term. I mean, it's been a constant assault and attack on trans people and trans rights ever since. And I mean, that was them giving us that warning that that's what this was going to be. And they were right. I mean, it hasn't stopped since then. I mean, they went out of their way to tear down one of the only things protecting trans people, especially in schools, went out of their way to get rid of that, to tear that down, to remove that protection from a group of people that already need, so much protection in our country. And I mean, again, they haven't stopped doing that since. Their directive since that point has been very anti-LGBT, very anti-trans.
When you decided to be a plaintiff in the lawsuit and really challenge discriminatory practices, what led you to take on an entire system? What gave you that courage to actually feel that you could do that?
I don't know that it was courage so much as survival. What I knew was that I had two options, and that was to sit down and endure that kind of harassment and discrimination for the next 3 years of my high school career, on the background of having always been horribly bullied, with absolutely no one willing to help me whatsoever. I was always left out to sea by my school, period. I was never, ever safe in any school system I've ever been in. And so I could either continue to be unsafe and continue to be harassed and separated from my peers and discriminated against, or I could continue to have all of those things happen to me, but I could also fight back. And so I was probably going to get a rough road either way. And I realized that what was important to me was feeling like I had the power to fight back and stand up, and feeling like I did what I could in saying, no, that's not right, and I'm not going to stand for this, at least not without a fight. And that was really what drove me. It was just a matter of justice, a feeling of justice, a feeling of, I won't let them do this to me without fighting back with everything I have.
And I'm sure after you became a plaintiff in the lawsuit, you received a significant amount of outreach from others throughout the country that may be going through the same thing. Can you just briefly tell us what you learned in interacting with other students throughout the country?
Yeah, I mean, I learned, of course, that my experience is not unique. That first of all, not only do many kids, of course, get banned from their appropriate facilities, but I've heard many stories very similar to mine where they were allowed to have that little taste of freedom, that little taste of equality, and then someone complained, and all of a sudden the administration decided they were not worth defending. What I've learned, almost more than anything else, is that it's very clear that for most people, or for many people at least, equality comes as a matter of convenience. If it's convenient and it's not stirring the pot to let that kid use the bathroom, yeah, then they'll try to do it. As soon as someone complains and they might have to do some, some defending of a trans kid, then that's too much work for them and they're not going to do it. And it's easier to choose a discriminatory route. And time again, I've seen basically just examples of schools and school systems not being willing to take the effort and do the work that it takes to make a supportive school environment for all their students. And that is an area of failing that many students of many different intersections experience, unfortunately, from race to ability. But this is still the case, with trans kids. If it gets too hard to defend them, people stop.
Now, Gavin, you've been able to live authentically now as a result of the litigation. I understand you still face challenges, but we have over the next 2 months to prepare for what we believe is the most consequential election of our lifetime. What is your greatest concern coming into November for the younger generation of trans folks, and how do you speak to them about the importance of this year's election?
My greatest concern is that there is a rhetoric among young folks that'll do the Republicans' job for them in disenfranchising us from the vote, in making us feel like our vote doesn't matter, in making us feel like voting is ineffective. This is, however horrible the system may be and however unhappy we all are about it, the fact remains that we only have one way to play the game right this very second. And if we're not responsible with doing that and pushing out the vote, we're going to get 4 more years of Trump, period. As much as we would love, a third party or another candidate, this is what we have to work with, and we have to put what we have behind it, or else. These 4 years have been so disastrous, and there is absolutely nothing worth staring down 4 more years of that. We have to do everything we can to get that vote out, to make sure people are mobilized to vote, people are going to the polls, people are registered to vote. Everything, absolutely everything we can do to make sure that this does not happen for another 4 years.
Gavin, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your ongoing activism. We really appreciate it. And now we have our next guest, Tanya Walker, who is a longtime advocate for LGBTQ equality. Tanya, thank you so much for joining us. Can you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Thank you. Yes, I'm Tanya Walker, and I'm a plaintiff in HRC's case over healthcare against the Trump administration. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I'm an activist. I'm the co-founder of New York Transgender Advocacy Group, and I am also a member of Equality New York.
So Tanya, you referenced that you are one of the plaintiffs in the Human Rights Campaign's lawsuit challenging the Trump administration's attempt to effectively strip away non-discrimination protections from the Affordable Care Act. Can you tell us why you decided to join this lawsuit?
I decided to join this lawsuit because of how I was treated at a major cancer hospital here in New York City. I was treated very badly, not given my medications, misgendered the whole time, harassed by staff. And this is after the election of Donald Trump. The healthcare was just horrible. I joined HRC's lawsuit against the Trump administration because nobody was listening to me. Nobody was listening to my story. And I needed to help protect the healthcare of the LGBT community, and especially the transgender community, who the Trump administration has been at war with ever since he was sworn in. I'm getting sick and tired of being used as a pawn in Trump's political game for him to win votes against the LGBT community. I joined this, to save the lives of the trans youth and LGBT youth in society, because his policies are genocidal. Transgender children, experience and transgender people experience the most hatred in all of society. And Trump's policies are destroying our community, are trying to erase us, trying to erase our human and civil rights. And I think that by joining this lawsuit, it gives me a chance to fight back against his policies.
Tanya, can you provide viewers with a little bit more context of what it's been like to live as a transgender woman under the Trump administration?
It's been like a war zone. Since Trump's been elected, he went after the transgender children, then he went after transgender veterans. He has gone after everything in our lives. It's been very stressful. It's made me want to fight more. It's been depressing. I've had a lot of problems. So I talk to people all the time about what's going on with the Trump administration. It's just been horrible since Trump's been in. He's been attacking us on everything. He is using us to get more votes from his base, so that he can look good, and also telling lies about us. He doesn't know anything about us. The Trump administration knows nothing about us. He is trying to destroy us as human beings. He is trying to take away our civil and human rights, and taking away our health care is a very dangerous move. I'm a U.S. Army veteran who served this country. Trump said that he had bone spurs and didn't go to Vietnam. I put my life on the line for the United States of America, and I deserve human and civil rights in this country. I deserve it. I'm an honorably discharged veteran, and I don't think it's fair that his administration is using transgender people and the LGBT community to get votes by discriminating against us.
And Tanya, as you know, as I mentioned before, we have 68 or so days before this coming election. And for people who are watching or people who haven't made a determination as to how they're going to engage, what would you say to them based on your experience over the past 3.5 years?
I would we really need campaigns, directed at the LGBT community, and also teach people how to fact check all this fake information all over social media. And we definitely need to get people registered to vote. We need to let people know where they need to vote in each state, not just New York. We need to definitely educate folks and have more panels like this to educate them on why it's so important this year to vote, and what we have and what we will lose if we do not vote.
Tanya, thank you. Again, thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for fighting the tough fight, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Then our final guest is Lizette Trujillo, who has been an advocate for fairness and equality in her own right. Lizette, can you please introduce yourself to viewers?
Hi, Alfonso. Thank you so much for having me on. My name is Lizette Trujillo. My pronouns are she, her, hers, or ella in Spanish. And I'm part of the human rights campaign Parents for Transgender Equality Council.
So Lizette, you also have a transgender son and you live in Arizona. You have unfortunately experienced firsthand the impact of both the anti-immigrant, anti-Latino rhetoric and policies of the Trump administration, as well as their anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ agenda. I wanted to see if you can spend a few minutes talking to us about some examples of how your family has been impacted by this administration on a very personal level.
Yeah, I think when you live at the intersections under this administration, it's exhausting. Every couple of weeks, there are new things coming out of the news, ways in which this administration will try to sort of stress marginalized communities with putting out a policy or attempting to put out policy or rollback policy that puts everyone kind of, I can't even think of the word, but it just creates a stress on already marginalized communities. So for us, my husband is an immigrant. He naturalized 3 years ago, but he was here. He grew up in the United States. I think I think that our country was founded by immigrants, and I think that um, to villainize them at this time is purposeful. And it's been difficult for us as a family to have to constantly justify how our families arrived here, right? Like, I'm first generation. And so when my child came out as transgender, I just thought to myself, great, now we have another layer to our identities and something else to work through, because this administration has been very purposeful in how they've targeted trans youth in schools. I have to drive my child 45 minutes twice a day, so it's 45 minutes each way, to a safer school district. I'm lucky in that my husband and I are small business owners, and I have the flexibility to do that. But there are other families that don't, and that doesn't even take into account families that live along the border like we do, that are undocumented, who are fearful of supporting their trans child. Um, if you think about the intersections, if you are an undocumented parent and you want to do legal name changes, you're not going to want to go to a court and try to change your child's name. That's going to be something you're afraid to do. And so for us, it's been helping other families navigate their situations, learning how to navigate our own. My child has faced various discrimination. I think that the constant conversation around build that wall, or why are you speaking Spanish? My child hears all of that and then has to hear rhetoric around being trans is wrong. And so having to internalize all of that is very difficult for someone who's 13. And it's disappointing to see this administration constantly attack immigrant families, Mexican Americans, and Mexican immigrants, and also trans youth.
So, as a parent and
Mhm.
as an activist, you have to really think about your family's future. You have to think about your son's future and his personal safety, not only as it relates to going to school every day, but also career opportunities. Can you just talk about, for a few minutes, how you view the next 68 days, how you view the next election that folks are now preparing for, through the lens of your family, through the lens of your personal experiences?
Honestly, I think that it's all hands on deck, and everybody needs to go out and vote. We cannot have another 4 years of Trump. I think that what I really think about is not only my child's safety, but I think about all the children who are in cages still along the border and in other parts of the country. I think about people who saw progress and all of a sudden recognize that we are being targeted, our families are being targeted, and we need our allies to show up and vote. Families, the trans community, the LGBTQ community cannot do this alone. And I understand that many people who might feel like they don't know a trans person or do not have LGBTQ people in their families, they may not see this as something that's important to them. But I think that what they need to understand is that trans youth, trans people, people of color, Latinx people are part of the fabric of our country, and that we need to be taking care of each other now, especially in this election, and we need to show up and vote. This will fall on everyone.
What do you want to say specifically to parents who have transgender children and who are struggling in states all over this country because the Trump administration has not been supportive?
I think what I want people to understand is that there was a patchwork of protections to begin with, so it was already difficult. And what I see more when I speak to other families, 90% of them will say, I'm afraid, because they're not afraid that they have a trans youth, but they're afraid that their children won't be safe, that their children will not be able to thrive. When you think about housing and unemployment, and you think about suicide risks, all of those things terrify parents. But what I want parents to know is that they aren't alone, that there are thousands of us across the state, maybe not all visible, but those of us that are visible are there to tell you that this is doable, that supporting your trans youth is feasible. You can find schools that are supportive. You can find communities that are supportive, and that you don't have to navigate this alone.
Carter, Gavin, Tanya, and Lizette, thank you. Thank you for your bravery and for your activism. And thank you for standing tall on behalf of all LGBTQ people who have and continue to face oppression and discrimination under the Trump administration. Over the next few days and months, you all will unfortunately hear and see a lot of misinformation about the Trump administration and what it has done for the LGBTQ community. It's not only absurd, but deeply offensive. The Trump-Pence administration has attacked our community for years, from advocating that employers should be allowed to fire LGBTQ workers from their jobs, to allowing healthcare professionals to deny healthcare to LGBTQ people, from allowing adoption and foster care agencies to deny services to same-sex couples, single women, and religious minorities, to suggesting that we can all be hanged. This is a list of vile actions Trump has taken, and now he's trying to erase us and gaslight us. He cannot run away from the bias, the fear, and the bigotry that he has cultivated and spewed against our community, and we will make sure that the facts are known. Now, we must do everything that we can to ensure that we elect a pro-equality president this fall. Please visit hrc.org/vote to find out how you can get involved and ensure that you're making your voice heard. Thank you all for joining us.